let's talk about the 3DS. After all, it's over 10 years old now. And, you know, I don't really want to think about that. Anyways, it's wild to think that I was 11 when the 3DS had first released. I remember being in elementary school and being on a field trip. You know, the ones where you needed to put down like $10 that you get from your parents. Well, the bus ride we had taken actually had onboard Wi-Fi, and I was watching the E3 presentation on the way there. I couldn't tell you where we were going, but all I could tell you is that I was glued to my iPod screen, just being completely mesmerized by the 2-minute snippet that we had received the 3DS that day. Seeing Iwata walk up on screen and pulling out the 3DS with Mario popping out of the screen, that was crazy, just looking back at it. And, you know, there were some really, really weird things happening in that trailer. But, you know, I guess that's just how Nintendo was. So wacky and out there. Like, the entire concept of them having a handheld unit that could produce a 3D image without the need for any sort of special equipment was insane during that time. And remember, this was when 3D was a huge thing. And for years, even Nintendo themselves were trying multiple different ways to get the hardware to get immersive 3D. Like, even the GameCube had ideas crafted for it. I remember I had sold my DSi XL to get a 3DS. I had traded it in about a week or so beforehand so I could have the money, but this was before I really knew much about the world of pre-ordering, and little did I know when I arrived on the launch day of the system, I was not actually able to secure one at GameStop. Felt pretty defeated, I cried, you know, before you can say anything, I had just turned 11, a crushed little kid that was excited for this thing. You can't really blame me. I did end up getting an order placed for one though, and then my mother had actually driven us to a different mall just to roam around. It's kind of just what we did back then. The local mall didn't really have much going for it, hard to maintain a store up in New York with all the taxes and stuff. So we would drive out to Albany a lot and go to the malls within that area. Anyways, we would get to the mall and I went to GameStop and it turns out that they actually had 3DSs in stock. Not pre-ordered though, which is pretty wild looking back at it, especially considering how the Wii now the Switch were in terms of their sales within the first year. I had gotten the 3DS I wanted to, the aqua blue one. I carried it out of the store and I was just so excited. I didn't even get any games because I couldn't afford them, but having the unit right there was so fantastic. Just holding it in the box, in the bag. I was so excited to get home and play it. But my mom had gone and searched around some stores and such, you know, how moms like to shop. And I just sat my butt down right on a Macy's carpet and opened it right there just to see it and boot it up for the first time. I was so careful with the thing too, only letting myself touch it if my hands were clean. Yeah, I know that's kind of weird, but it was also the first console I'd purchased with my own money, so I wanted to take really good care of it. As you know, not really many games came out within the first year, but we all know that. I got Pile of Wings and Ocarina of Time 3D, which was my first time actually playing Ocarina of Time. Another funny story about that is I was actually only able to buy the game because I had store credit on my GameStop card that I totally forgot about. And I was just curious to check to see if I had anything on it. I ended up getting the game. Did not regret it at all. Even if it's not my favorite Zelda, it was still a fantastic experience. Coming off from the Zelda high was after beating Twilight Princess for the first time within the same year. Then came along the Ambassador Program, and if you don't know what that is, it was a program that Nintendo, I guess, released to everybody who purchased a 3DS before a certain date. They must have realized that they made a really big mistake with the original launch price of the system, dropping it down from $250 to $180, I believe. Maybe it was $179.99, but I don't know all the specifics. And you know, for the people who bought the system at the original price, had gotten 20 free virtual console games ranging from NES to Game Boy to Game Boy Advance. And as far as I'm aware, those games never saw an actual release on the eShop either, which is really good for them to care so much about the consumer for the product like that. You really never see that with them these days. The people who supported the Wii U got thrown into the dirt by having to repurchase Wii U games with a bit of extra content for full price. I don't know, I feel like they could have tapped into your account and given you a discount if you had previously purchased those games before. Even like when you wanted to upgrade your games from Wii VC to Wii U VC. There was a whole presentation in a Nintendo Direct about that, I remember quite a few years back. I've also owned every 3DS revision except for the new 2DS, which had come out right after the Switch did. It didn't really interest me too much because I was in the minority and I actually used the 3D functionality on the system. And by this point I had the new 3DS, so it had that face tracking camera in the top, which was a really nice improvement. Going along with the whole idea of the 3DS revisions were really nice too. And I don't really mean from the XL variant. That was kind of a given after they did that with the DSi. But the extra power within the unit and the extra buttons definitely went a really long way, especially for games that actually ended up supporting it, which I don't believe that there were many. One of the only games you could actually play on the new 3DS was Xenoblade Chronicles 3D. It was a showcase of the handheld, essentially. Looking back at it, for them to have ported such a massive game, even after the upgrade, a pretty underpowered handheld, was such an awesome feat. It's not like there's really a reason to ever go back and play that version of the game now, but I did play it on my new 3DS, and while the graphics were severely downgraded, having that console experience on a handheld was extraordinary at the time. Go get Xenoblade D. It's a masterpiece, I promise. Wait, what? 3DS honestly had probably some of the best line of games for a handheld unit. You not only had the entirety of the DS backlog, but all these brand new games, which I would say are pretty close to console grade. Some games that definitely shine the most for me over the last 10 years of the 3DS would have to be, one, A Link Between Worlds. Now, I'm just gonna put this out there, I never actually completed A Link to the Past. I've made it to the Dark World on multiple different playthroughs, but I never completed it. I don't really know what it is, but most 2D Zelda games don't really do it for me. I can't even give a really good reason as to why. I just never really vibed with them. But A Link Between Worlds, yeah, give me some more of that. I love the wall merging gimmick, it's implemented so well, and the idea of you being able to tackle any dungeon in any order after the first 3 of them is just, it's so good. And it has a really solid story for something that doesn't have such a linear progression. Kind of surprising, you know? Next would probably be Super Mario 3D Land. It's a bite size of Mario fun on a handheld. What more could you ask for, really? It doesn't outclass anything like Sunshine or Galaxy or Odyssey or even Mario 64, but what it does is something great, even on a handheld. Now, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this one, but bear with me. I did not hate Sticker Star. I know, the T2Eddie fanboy didn't hate Sticker Star, but in my defense, I played it before I cared about comparing. I was just too young to really think much about it. Yeah, battles can be pointless, but they're still fun to do. Does everything really need to have a point to be enjoyable? If you look past the other games in the series that came before and even after it, I'd say this title is just okay. Don't play it, but it's just okay. And honestly, while I do have a huge list I could still continue going through from my 3DS experience, I don't really think I will. I have plenty of other games I love the little handheld for, but those are for another day. At the end of the day, I just wanted to give a little story of my 3DS adventures over the years. I really will miss this little handheld. It sure was a fighter, sticking around for 10 years. But now the Switch has taken its place, and I'd say we're getting some pretty great games on it. So that's all I really have to say. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Let me hear about your stories in the comments. I'd love to hear about some of them. If you'd like, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. I do lots of speedrunning, especially if you're into the Paper Mario series. Anyways, have yourself a wonderful rest of your day. Peace out.
Okay, that's all the time I've got. I gotta get back to playing Animal Crossing New Leaf on my Nintendo 3DS.